Deputy Moore, would you swear in the witness, please?
Solemnly swear affirm testimony you give to the court shall be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
State and spell your name for the record.
Andrea Sneiderman, Andrea Sneiderman.
All right. Mr. Rubin, you may continue, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Ms. Schneiderman.
Morning.
Ms. Schneiderman, when we left off yesterday, we were talking about the stresses that your working put on your family. Do you remember that?
I do.
And do you recall that you had discussed these stresses with some of your friends?
Yes.
You discussed the difficulties you and Rusty were having with Andrea Lippman, correct?
I discussed our life with Andrea Lippman, yes.
You discussed the difficulties you were having with Andrea Lippman, correct?
Correct.
And you discussed the difficulties you were having with Tammy Parker,
Correct.
And in fact, you, even as late as September 30th, you emailed Ms. Parker and described some of those difficulties, correct?
Are you referring to the email we spoke about yesterday?
Yes, stipulation number 5287.
Yeah, we were talking about whether we should go to the lake, and she wanted me to stay home to see her, and it was a stressful discussion on balancing between seeing my friends and all the family responsibilities I had. So yes, that's what we're talking about.
Not only was it a difficult discussion regarding balancing your friends versus your husband, but you described a rough patch in your marriage, correct?
Correct, that's what it says in the email.
The third friend you talked about it with was Shayna Citron.
Correct.
Who is Miss Citron?
A good friend.
How long you known her?
Probably since 2003, maybe 2004.
So 7, 8, 9 years, somewhere around.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Miss Citron lives in Atlanta.
Yes.
And you discussed with her the difficulties you were having working outside the home, correct?
I don't remember the exact things we talked about, but I'm sure that was one of them.
Do you recall talking to Miss Citron about having a hard time juggling getting dinner ready and spending time with the kids?
Yes.
Okay. And it was difficult to work 7:30 in the morning to whenever you came home, have to come home and get dinner ready, right?
Correct.
And have the kids clinging to your legs and wanting to play and all that, correct?
Correct.
And you have a husband who's home working hard on developing his business, correct?
Correct.
And he's trying to juggle his business side and having to take care of the kids and get them to and from wherever they have to go also, correct?
Correct.
Everybody's stressed.
Yep.
Now, you also talked to your friends about Mr. Newman's feelings for you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And let's go back to Miss Lippman. Do you recall speaking to Miss Lippman sometime shortly after the July 4th weekend in 2010 to talk to her about the fact that Mr. Newman had expressed a romantic interest in you?
Don't remember the time, but I'm sure that's about right.
Okay. And do you recall what she told you to do?
No, I don't.
Would it be consistent with your relationship and your discussions with Miss Lippman if she told you to go to Human Resources or discuss with you that option?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you recall talking to Miss Lippman about being scared to go to HR, to Human Resources?
I don't recall.
Now, at this point in July of 2010, you'd been at work since April 12th, correct?
Yes.
So April to May is 1 month, May to June is 2 months, June to July is, you've been at work 3 months around this time, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You described for your friend, well, let me back up, I'm sorry. Do you recall when you would have talked to Miss Lippman, not dates, but what trips in between what trips you would have talked to her?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, let's back up a little further then. You described for us yesterday various trips that you took with Mr. Newman in 2010. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, the first trip I think you went on with him was to Melbourne, Florida. Right?
Correct.
Did you have any personal conversations with Mr. Newman in Melbourne, Florida?
I'm sure that we did.
And you would talk about the normal things people talk about when they're sitting at a dinner.
Correct.
Interests, things you like to do
Correct.
when you're not talking about work.
Correct.
And at that point, the weekend of the 24th of May, the week of the 24th of May, he had not at that time expressed a romantic interest in you.
Correct.
The next trip you took with him was to Norfolk, Virginia, correct?
Correct.
And is it in Norfolk, Virginia, where Mr. Newman first made his interest known to you?
Nope.
Okay. Did you have dinner with him?
Yeah.
Did you share wine, as Mr. Geary pointed out yesterday?
Yes.
Okay. And did he discuss with you at that time some of his childhood memories?
Talked about where he went to school, I believe.
You talk about the boarding school.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to work on that today. He described his boarding school
Yes.
situation. Okay. No other conversations that would be of a romantic nature?
Correct.
Okay. The next trip you took with Mr. Newman would have been in July, about July 13th, 14th of 2010, correct? Does
Correct?
that sound correct?
Yeah, it wasn't to Lake Tahoe, it was to Minden, Nevada.
Okay. The site visit was in Minden, Nevada.
That's correct.
How far is that from Lake Tahoe?
20 miles.
Okay.
10 miles, 20 minutes.
Didn't you at some point go to Lake Tahoe?
Yes.
Okay. And was it in Lake Tahoe where Mr. Newman read you a poem?
Yes.
Okay. Now, up to that point, so April, May, June, he had not expressed any interest in you.
He had not openly expressed interest in me, that's correct.
Well, openly. Had he intimated to you that he was interested in you?
No, nothing verbally. Just
You're limiting it. I'm not limiting it at all. Not openly, not verbally. Did he express did he intimate to you in any way an interest in you?
I felt he was being overly friendly.
Okay. And in what way?
Pat on the shoulder, pat on the leg, what normal people would do as friends, but it just seemed odd.
Okay.
And that's the conversations I had with my friends, I'm sure.
Right. Okay. So you told your friends that you thought your boss might be interested in you,
Right.
but you weren't really sure.
Exactly.
What do I do? And that's the question you and your friends talked. Correct?
I don't know if that's how I posed the question, but I'm sure it was something like that.
And there were a variety of options for you at that point. Number one, you could report it to Human Resources, right? That's an option.
Correct.
That option didn't seem so good to you at that time, correct?
Correct.
Okay. For the reasons you discussed yesterday.
Correct.
You felt like if that is what it comes to, you're going to lose.
I always would.
Okay. The other option was to shy away from him, as you put it yesterday. Avoid situations where you and he would be alone together. Correct?
Sure.
A third option would be to confront him and tell him, stop.
Yep.
Okay. So those are the options that you and your friends talked about around the time leading up to the trip to Minden, Nevada. Correct?
Correct.
And it is in Minden, Nevada that or actually in Lake Tahoe, Nevada, you two have dinner.
Correct.
And do you recall the restaurant? Not the name, but the type of restaurant.
No.
Do you recall whether there was anybody else with you?
No.
You don't recall?
No, I'm sorry. There was no one else with us.
Okay. So
In the restaurant?
Yes, having dinner.
There were plenty of other people eating dinner in the restaurant.
With you.
No,
Eating together?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry, it wasn't a clear question. And is during this dinner that Mr. Newman expresses his love for you?
No, that's not exactly how it happened.
Okay.
I think we've covered that.
Well, we haven't. Tell us what he said in his poem.
I don't know.
Okay.
I have no idea.
So a man expresses his interest in you,
Right.
correct? In a poem.
Correct.
And it's the first time it's been an outward expression.
Correct.
And it's something I assume does not happen to you every day, unfortunately, maybe?
It's never happened.
Never happened before. Did you tell your friends about the poem?
I did.
Okay. Who did you tell?
I don't know.
Well, how many friends did you talk to about Mr. Newman?
I suppose the three that you mentioned.
Miss Littman, Miss Parker, and Miss Citron.
Correct.
Okay. You told one of those friends about the poem.
I don't know.
Okay. Did you tell your mom about the poem?
I don't know.
Okay. So, and we know you didn't tell Mr. Sneiderman about the poem.
Correct.
So he declares in the poem his romantic interest in you. Is that right?
I don't remember what was in the poem, but it certainly, whatever was in there made me think that he has romantic interests.
Was there any doubt in your mind after that poem was read to you, or that dinner?
After the poem was read to me, there was no doubt in my mind that he had more than friend interests in me.
And you talked to your friends.
Is that a question, Counselor?
No, Your Honor, I'm going to ask a question.
All right, you may ask questions.
Do you recall talking to Miss Parker prior to your trip to Colorado? So it had been after the Minden, Nevada poem. And she told you, don't report it to Human Resources. It would be career ending.
I don't recall our conversation, the specifics of our conversation.
Okay.
She did help me look into, she asked a friend of hers who works for either her company or another who works in human resources and asked what they thought of the oddities of the situation and how it might go down.
Okay, the strategies. Now, this is in a time, you're in a job 3 months, correct?
Yeah, I believe we
You
said that.
have $800,000 in savings, you and Mr. Sneiderman.
That's correct.
You have a house in Dunwoody that's half paid for.
Correct.
And a lake house in Eatonton, Georgia on Lake Oconee.
Correct.
And you're dealing with worrying whether you're going to lose this job or not, correct?
That's correct. We're very smart financial individuals. We only live on the income that we earn.
So it was worth dealing with this issue with Mr. Newman, and so you wouldn't have to dig into the savings that you and Mr. Sneiderman had accumulated.
That's correct.
Do you recall, even as late as September 2010, so long after Minden, Nevada, talking to Shayna Citron about the situation?
I don't recall.
Do you recall talking to Shayna about the
I
situation?
talk to
with Mr.
Shayna
Newman?
a lot. She's a
About-
friend of mine, so I can't recall every conversation I've had with her.
Right, but you do recall confiding in Shayna that your boss is hitting on you?
Yes,
Okay. And do you recall telling Miss Citron that you've handled it? That you're not interested, and that you told him that you told Mr. Newman that?
I can't recall that. So were my exact words, but
Does that sound
Sure.
like the gist of your conversation with Miss Citron?
yes.
Okay. And do you recall being concerned at that point, it was the September, because you had an upcoming trip to Europe?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Do you recall being concerned
About
about
what?
Mr. Newman's interest in you because the two of you had an upcoming trip to England?
Are you asking me personally, was I concerned, or does this involve Shayna Citron?
Well, do you recall being concerned because you and Mr. Newman had an upcoming trip to England?
I was always vigilant, so if that's concern, I suppose the answer would be yes.
Do you recall expressing your concern to Miss Citron about your upcoming trip and how to handle the fact that the two of you were traveling to England?
I don't recall that exact conversation, but I'm sure that we talked about it.
Okay. Now, you talked to your friends about Mr. Newman's advances, his romantic interest in you, correct? We established that, right?
Yep.
And you talked to your mom about it too, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And you told your mom that your boss was romantically interested in you, but that you had handled it, correct?
Correct.
You told him nothing was going to happen, correct?
I told who?
Your mom. I'm
Her?
sorry, I said him. Her.
I told her.
Right. Nothing was going to happen.
That's correct.
That you were committed to Rusty,
You bet.
and it was taken care of.
You bet.
Okay. Do you recall when you would have told your mom
No, I don't.
about this?
No, I don't.
Would it have been after the poem was read to you?
I have no idea.
Would there be any reason to talk to her prior to the poem being read to you?
I have no idea. I talk to my mom about 4 times a day, so I can't tell you when I talk to her about it.
Okay. I understand you talk to your mom 4 times a day. You don't talk to her about Mr. Newman's romantic interest 4 times a day, do you?
No.
Okay. So this was a significant conversation between you and your mom.
Almost every conversation I have with my mom is significant.
Okay. You told your mom, though, that you had handled it, that Mr. Newman's interest was expressed, but you had rebuffed it, essentially, correct?
That's what we said, yes.
Okay. Now, you were interviewed by the Dunwoody police, or met with them at least 4 times, correct? And I'll go over the dates with you if you want.
Including the time they came into my home?
Well,
Or all the times they came into my home?
No.
So-
Let me ask the question. You met with them on November 19th,
Correct.
the day after Mr. Sneiderman was killed.
That's correct.
Okay. And you spoke to a Detective Thompson.
And Sergeant Cordellino?
Okay. And you met with the police on the 24th of November, less than a week later, 5 days
Yeah, in the
later.
middle of the Shiva, I went to the police station. That's correct.
Okay. And you met with them again, and we just talked about it. You talked about it yesterday, January 4th of 2011.
In a conference room. Yep. That's
and then
correct, yes.
again on the 5th of January 2000.
I was interrogated on the 5th. That's correct.
Okay. Now, you understood as a well-educated, experienced in the business world person that the Dunwoody police had a big job ahead of them in solving your husband's shooting, correct?
I'm a business person, not a criminal justice expert, so I don't have any knowledge in the criminal justice system.
Okay. You knew when they were coming to you, they needed information, correct?
No, I did not know any of that at the
Really?
time.
Did you know that you did not know that police need information when they're investigating a case?
I've never had anyone murdered in my family, so I don't know what it's like to be asked questions about a murder or about any crime, because I've never had any crime in my life until now.
Well, let me ask you a question. You understood that they were investigating, correct?
They made that clear after, no, yes,
Okay.
yes,
And you understood what they were investigating was the shooting of your husband.
yes,
And you understood when someone investigates, they gather information.
yes,
And you understood that when they gather information, they talk to people.
yep,
And one of the people they were talking to for information was you.
that's correct.
Okay. And you did your best to help them gather information, correct?
Given the shock and trauma I was under of just losing my husband's and my children's father, yep, I did my best.
Correct. And on the 19th, and I can only speculate you must have been in total a mess.
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
Mhm.
Even on the 24th of November, you're still in shock. You're you're sitting Shiva. It's a horrible time for you.
Yeah, I had media at my door on a daily basis and invading my life and my children's privacy. So yes, it was horrific.
With all those things going on, you're still trying to help the best you can the Dunwoody police.
Yes, in fact, I was one of the only people that was helping the Dunwoody police.
And you're answering their questions, Thompson's and Cordellino's, Lieutenant Barnes,
Detective Sides,
Detective Sides, the best you can.
best of my ability.
Okay. And you told the police that Mr. Newman expressed an interest in you.
On November 19th at my dining room table.
Okay. Prior to your interview with the police on November 19th, had any of your friends, and I'm talking about Andrea Lippman, Shayna Citron, Tammy Parker, told you you need to tell the police about your boss?
I don't remember pretty much of the 24 to 48 hours after my husband was shot and killed. A lot of people were telling me a lot of things.
Okay.
But in fact, I did tell the police about my boss.
Yes.
When they came to my home.
So about an hour and 19 minutes into the interview, you're asked the question, has anybody expressed an interest in you, correct?
That's correct.
And you said, my boss.
Yep.
You said, he hasn't done anything to break up my family. He's just expressed feelings for me, correct?
That's correct. He seemed like a very normal guy.
And then, and I don't know do you remember your mom telling Detective Thompson, ask her if his interest was reciprocated?
No, I know that the police asked that question. I don't remember my mom being the one to suggest it.
Okay. Do you recall telling the police, no, I did not reciprocate. I made it clear and that's that?
That is correct, and I think based on what we saw yesterday, there was no reciprocation in any email of any feelings to Hemi Newman.
A week later, or 5 days later, when sitting down with the detectives, the subject came up again, correct?
We talked about a lot of things with Detective Thompson, and that was one of them, yes.
That being Mr. Newman's romantic interest in you.
We talked about our working professional life, yes, and I guess the romantic interest.
Okay.
I don't remember much of that interview.
Okay. Do you recall telling the detective you traveled for business?
Yes.
And that at one point, when you were at dinner, Mr. Newman said, you're fantastic.
That I'm fantastic?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that he said that.
Okay. And he said to you, and this is what you told the police, I'd love to have a relationship. Do you recall telling the police that?
I don't recall.
Okay. And do you recall being asked, did he, Mr. Newman, go into more detail trying to persuade you to reciprocate? And you saying no?
I don't recall, but I'm sure that we could review that if you'd like to.
Do you recall telling the police, we're close friends, I enjoy him, I admire him, we talk a lot, we're friends?
That's correct.
And the police said, well, so it's essentially a blip on the radar. And you said, yes, it's a blip on the radar.
At that time, that is what I was led to believe by Hemi Newman as well.
Do you recall that in the interview on November 24th, 2010, you were asked to describe the business trips that you took with Mr. Newman, and you described Melbourne, Florida, Norfolk, Virginia, Minden, Nevada, England, and Greenville?
I don't recall the trips I could remember at that point, no.
Do you recall you did not mention Longmont, Colorado?
I don't recall that, but I think we identified yesterday that may be the case. But that was a trip I went on for training. I did not travel to Longmont, Colorado.
Do you recall telling the police that you don't think the Hemi thing is anything, but that's up to you guys to figure out?
That's exactly, probably sounds like something I would say. Seems kind of ridiculous, right? Of a theory that my boss would kill my husband. Just seemed kind of stupid at the time.
Despite your friends telling you, tell the police about your boss.
Yeah, which I did. My friends didn't say, I think Hemi Newman killed your husband. Did they?
Do you recall in late December talking to one of your friends about the fact that you were going to tell the police that you think it's Hemi?
I'm sure that I did.
Do you recall who you talked to about it?
No idea. There
Could
were
it have
people
been-
at my home every day, every night.
Well, do you
through that
recall?
time.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt.
I'm done.
Do you recall having a specific conversation with Tammy Parker about the fact that by the end of December...
You mean the
20
December 30th conversation on my anniversary? Is
Yes.
that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Sure.
Do you recall telling her that you know who did it? It's Hemi Newman. He looks like the guy in the sketch.
I think we talked yesterday that if that's what Tammy says, I don't remember a lot of what I said during this time, so if that's what she says I said, we'll go with that.
Okay. You don't disagree that you said that to her?
I don't disagree.
Okay. Now, we talked about yesterday, you were going to email the police.
That's correct.
Chief Grogan.
There is an email still in my draft folder of my Yahoo account.
But you were concerned that maybe Mr. Newman
That's correct.
was monitoring your email.
Not only would he be monitoring my email, but he was also in Florida at the time, according to a work email I had received.
And he could be watching your every move.
Every time.
Okay. So you didn't email the Dunwoody police,
No.
correct? You didn't call the Dunwoody police, correct?
That's correct.
Your parents didn't call the Dunwoody police.
That's correct.
Tammy Parker didn't call the Dunwoody police.
Correct.
Nobody, until you came up in January 4th, called the Dunwoody police.
That's correct.
Okay.
I saw a lot of faces in that sketch, which I'm sure most of the public did as well. And
Well,
if they would
let's-
have arrested someone else, I bet I would have seen their face in that sketch too.
Let's talk about the faces that you saw.
Okay. I was shown 3 sketches when I went to the Dunwoody Police Department sometime in November. None of the sketches looked the same.
On January 4th, you actually went to the Dunwoody Police Department with your rabbi
And my father
and your father, and you met with Deputy Chief David Sides
and Chief Grogan.
and Chief Grogan.
Yeah, we called the meeting.
And you were concerned that the Dunwoody Police were not communicating enough with you.
They had not been communicating with me
Okay.
at all.
And in that conversation, after discussing the need for more interaction with the police, you brought up Star voicemail and explained the concept to the police.
I don't remember the exact conversation, but I actually do still have a notebook that as I was in Florida that entire time, I made a list of things that I wondered where we stood on those things,
Okay.
what they had followed up on. It's a bulleted list, and I went down that list.
Now, first and foremost on that list, I'm sure, was your suspicion that Hemi Newman was the shooter.
It was on the list.
It was on the list.
That's correct.
So it wasn't bullet point number 1 on your list.
No, sir, it was not.
Okay. This is despite the fact that in December
got it.
30th, you had the conversation
it.
with Tammy Parker.
Yeah.
All right. Now, as we go forward, please let me finish my question, and I'll let you answer without interrupting you, okay? Okay?
Yes.
You talked to them, though, about the people that you saw in the sketch, who you thought it could be.
I don't remember the conversation.
Well, you said you saw several people in the sketch. Does the name Lamar Perlis sound familiar?
I did not say I saw Lamar Perlis's face in that sketch. You're mixing up parts of that conversation.
Okay.
We talked about Lamar Perlis.
All right, let me back up then and then see if I can get it right.
Okay.
Did you discuss with the Dunwoody Police possible suspects,
Yes, sir, I did.
including the following people? Lamar Perlis, correct?
I did not say it that way, no.
Steve Kirshner,
No. I mentioned all these people's names to discuss Rusty's involvement with that family and in that business. I did not say that they were suspects.
did you give the name Bruce Fike?
As someone that they may want to talk to in the Dunwoody area, that Rusty was a networking with, that maybe he would know someone. That's correct.
Did you give the name Nick Ashdowns?
Yes, I did. It's
Did-
Ashdown.
Ashdown, Ashdowns.
I believe so.
Did you give the name Calvin, the guy who posted on the Harvard job board and runs an entertainment company in Atlanta?
Yes, sir.
And you gave the name Hemi Newman.
Yes, sir.
He's your boss, and you called him 5 times the morning of the shooting and couldn't get him.
I asked if they had, in a very, very animated fashion, I asked if he had been in and been questioned by the Dunwoody police. And when I told them on November 19th, I presume that everyone I have mentioned through all the times in my dealings with the Dunwoody police, every person I came to them with should have been questioned. That's my knowledge of the criminal justice system.
Did you
So-
tell the police?
Hold on, let her finish. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
So I made an assumption that all those people in a month would have been questioned. Now, since I hadn't heard and since the Dunwoody Police Department wasn't communicating with me, that was my opportunity to follow up on all of those people that in the back of my mind I was thinking, could it have been this person? Could it have been that person? And on Hemi Newman specifically, since I had this gut feeling that it was him, I asked, why hasn't he been in here? Really crossing my fingers, hoping that they would say, yep, he's been in here. It's no problem.
Okay. Did you tell the Dunwoody police, specifically Chief Grogan and Deputy Chief Sides, that every time you look at the artist drawing of the suspect, you see all of these men's faces?
I don't believe that that's what I said, but I'm sure we could either play it or read it. I really think that you're mixing up what was meant to be said, or what I meant when I said that. I don't think I said that all of those people's faces were in the sketch. I was merely trying to say that you could see anyone's face in that kind of sketch, including the fact that the description doesn't actually match Mr. Newman.
Next question.
On the, let's go back to the Nevada,
I'm sorry.
the trip to Nevada, Minden,
Yes.
Nevada.
Mhm.
And that is where Mr. Newman read you the poem, correct?
Correct.
And that is where, I'm sorry, is that funny?
I just
Now,
don't
hold
know.
on for a second. The lawyer's approach, you're gonna ask questions. You are not gonna make comments about my witnesses or any witness in here. You may ask questions.
Yes, Your
We
Honor.
clear?
Yes.
Ask a question. Next question.
That is where Mr. Newman read you a poem.
Correct.
And that is where you talked about his family with him.
And what conversation are we talking?
Minden, Nevada, Lake Tahoe, Nevada, actually, at dinner.
At dinner,
That's
talked
what-
about his family. What specifically are you asking?
His life story.
We talked about some of his family's history.
And-
I don't think life story, that would take quite some time.
Well, let me ask you a question. Did you tell the police on January 5th when you met with them that Mr. Newman did tell me his life story?
I'm sure.
That's what you told the police?
Okay.
Okay. And did he tell you, as part of his life story, that his father was a camp survivor?
Yes.
Okay. And did he tell you, as part of his life story, that his father was emotionally distant or a tough guy?
I don't think we had that specific conversation about his father.
Okay. Did he tell you did he tell you when he's describing his life story the fact that his mother was not around much?
Yeah, it probably told me that.
Okay. Did he tell you, in talking about his life story, that his sister had been raped as a child?
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that Mr. Newman was opening up to you about some of the important things in his life?
Yes.
He found, you believe, he found you easy to talk to?
Yes, most of my friends do.
Okay. He talked to you about Israel, correct? Being schooled in Israel.
Yes, that he went to school there, yes.
Did he tell you that he had been put on the plane by his father?
I don't know if it was by his father. He was put on a plane to go to school, yes.
Did he tell you that he had been put on the plane and flew to Israel by himself?
Yes.
And did he tell you the story of what happened when he landed in Israel and there was no one to meet him?
I don't remember the details, but no one to meet him sounds about right.
Okay. And he told you, of course, how he then had to get himself to the school.
I don't remember that, but okay.
I'm asking.
I don't know.
Okay. Did he tell you that at the school there would be times when people would go home for the holidays or weekends and he had no one to go to?
Yes.
And he told you how that made him feel?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
And he told you how that made him feel, correct?
I don't recall. I'm sure that he did, but I don't know if there's a specific thing that you're looking for.
Well, he told you that it was a lonely feeling, everybody going home and he's got no one to go to,
I
correct?
think one presumes that when other people are going to their families and you're not, that would be quite lonely.
And that was the gist of his discussion with you?
That was it.
Okay. All right. That's Minden, Nevada. The next trip you took, and we talked about this yesterday, is the trip to Longmont, Colorado.
Correct.
And when we say Denver, Longmont, that's essentially the same area, correct? That's one trip.
I wasn't in Denver, I was in Longmont.
I understand that. Do you have to fly into Denver to get to Longmont?
Yes.
Okay, so you were in Denver.
I flew into Denver.
Okay. So yesterday you were talking to Mr. Geary about not telling the police about Denver or anything. We're talking about that same trip. There's not two trips to Colorado.
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Sneiderman, you talked yesterday.
I'm sorry, can I be called Mrs. Sneiderman, or is that not is that against the court rules?
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to call her whatever she wants. That's fine.
All right,
I was saying Ms.
She prefers Mrs. Sneiderman.
I will.
Courtesy if you would, Counselor.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mrs. Sneiderman. And I meant no disrespect by that.
Let's ask questions.
Of course, you knew, as you discussed yesterday, that Mr. Newman was coming out to meet you in Longmont, Colorado.
He was coming out to Longmont, Colorado.
Well, do you still, as you sit here today, is it still your testimony that you thought he was there on business?
I really didn't care or know why he was there specifically. I know now why he was there, but that's only because of what everyone has been talking about.
Well, you knew that he was coming out to Longmont, Colorado, correct?
That's correct.
And you knew prior to his coming that he had called the desk clerk to get sent to you flowers and chocolates, correct?
There is an email on that, I guess, that we talked about yesterday. I don't think I processed that he had been repeatedly calling and obsessively calling the desk clerk, no. I really didn't pay much attention to that email at the time.
Okay. Your Honor, may I approach the
You
witness?
may.
Ms. Sneiderman, I've handed you a
Yeah.
paperclip stack of emails. At the bottom of each page, if you can see it, there's a number. The bottom of the first page should be the number 4869. And if I may approach, Your Honor, I can point that out.
4867.
Okay. So you looking at the right number? Okay. So when I talk to you about which email we're talking about, that's the number I'm
Yeah.
going to be going by.
Yep.
All right. You just testified that you really didn't pay attention to his emails, so you didn't know what he was doing. Let's back up a second. This is your boss who's emailing you, correct?
That's correct.
And he emailed you lots of times.
All the time.
And you responded to his emails when it was appropriate, correct?
Every day.
You had to read his emails
Yes, sir.
in order to respond to them.
Yes, sir.
Okay. On July 19th, he sent you an email, and if you'll look at stipulation page number 4869,
Yep.
he emailed you
Yes, electronic flowers.
electronic flowers, and then
Yes.
he says, let me read it,
Let him finish. Go ahead.
I tried to get this delivered tonight to your room, but ran into Hilton bureaucracy. How frustrating. Like 20 phone calls.
Yeah.
You really are special. Good night. Talk to you tomorrow. And your response was after.
Mr. Sneiderman.
Yes.
Let the lawyer finish before you start responding, okay? Let him finish his question, and then you may respond. You may finish now.
And you responded to that email, correct?
Yes.
And your response was, so thoughtful and sweet. I knew you might try something like this. Talk to you tomorrow.
Yeah, it says I'm joining a Mumbai quad opening call now. Yes.
Okay. You knew he might try something like this. Is that correct?
That's what it
That's what
says.
you said.
That's
Okay.
what it says.
May I approach you, Your
You
Honor?
may.
Mrs. Sneiderman,
Yep.
I'm handing you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit Number 3.
Yep.
Do you recognize that photograph?
No.
You don't?
I mean, it's flowers. Yes, I recognize it as flowers.
Okay. Do you recognize, let's go back to the email.
Uh-huh.
On page 4869, there's electronic flowers sent to you.
That's right.
And kind of new to me, electronic flowers means he's sending you a JPEG, a picture of flowers, correct?
That's what it says. Yeah.
And it says, as someone who's technologically savvy, Mrs. Sneiderman, the website he sent it from is
Yes.
www.sendflowers-to-hyderabad.com
That's what it says.
/images/mixedroses22.jpg.
Yes.
And you understand JPEG to mean a picture.
Yes.
Okay. On Defendant's Exhibit Number 3, do you see the website
Yes, I do.
that came from?
Yes, I do.
Would you tell us what the website is?
I presume it's a match to the other website you just read.
You don't have to presume. Look at it. See if it's a match.
Looks about close. Yeah.
Well, ma'am, is
Yes,
it
yes.
the exact website? or not?
Okay.
That's what he's asking.
Judge, can I have 1 second, please?
1 second, what, the lawyer, or what do you need, 1 second? We're back on the record.
Your Honor, there may be a discrepancy in my exhibit numbers. Mr. Geary thinks it's Defendant's Exhibit Number 4, and I'm happy to change it to Number 4.
All right. So this is gonna be D4.
If I could.
You may
Approach.
approach and make that change.
answering the question from before?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's an exact match on the website address.
Thank you, Mrs. Snyderman. You
You're
may continue.
welcome.
Mrs. Sneiderman, did you open the attachment when Mr. Newman sent you the email?
Yes, evidently I did.
And you responded to him,
Yep, that's what I said.
they're beautiful, I love
Love flowers.
flowers.
Love it.
Okay.
Paper flowers. On paper.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, ma'am.
On paper. Paper flowers.
You love the flowers on paper.
Well, I was just clarifying that this was flowers on a piece of paper, not physical flowers.
All right.
In your years in the business world,
Yes.
how often did your bosses send you emails like depicted in 4869 with attached flowers?
Never, but I've never been stalked by anyone either.
Was Mr. Newman stalking you at this time?
I didn't realize it at the time, but evidently that's what was happening.
The stalker that you've now testified about, you picked him up at the airport.
Yep,
You flew home with him.
that's correct.
You changed seats to sit next to him.
That's how we always traveled.
You took the limo to your house with him,
That's right, and I drove him home.
and then you drove him home.
That's right.
Your Honor, may I approach the
You
witness?
may.
Mrs. Sneiderman, I'm showing you what's been marked, or what's stipulated to as page number 4899. It's an email you talked about yesterday in your testimony.
Yes.
In that email, Mr. Newman
Yep.
emailed you exhausted. This is after your trip, correct?
I don't know the date.
July 25th?
That's what it says, yes.
Okay. That would have been after your trip to Longmont.
Yes.
Exhausted, you're in my every thought.
Yes.
Your response is not, stop stalking me.
Right.
It is not, leave me alone.
Right.
It is not, I've already made this clear.
My response in email is not that. That's correct.
Your response is, try to get some rest. Please enjoy the day.
Did the best I could.
May I approach you?
You may.
Mrs. Sneiderman, this man who's stalking you, Mr. Newman, on August 6th, you sent him your husband's email address.
That's correct.
You sent him this email address so the two of them could get together.
That's correct.
The two of them were going to get together to try to see if they could help each other in some way in the business world.
That was the reason I thought they were getting together, yes.
And in fact, on August 12th, they had lunch together.
I'm not aware of the dates, but I'm sure that that sounds about right.
You're, okay. Now, by August 12th, you've already disclosed to your friends that your marriage is under stress, correct?
Okay, yes, correct.
Right? I mean, you talked to Miss Littman or Miss Citron or Miss Parker about
Yeah,
that.
I don't remember the dates that we talked to them. Remember, I talked to them a lot, so.
And you testified yesterday that July was an especially stressful month because you had 2 trips to go to in July.
That's correct.
So would it be fair to say that by August 6th, you had already you had been feeling stress of your job, you've been having some difficulties in balancing everything, and you and Mr. Sneiderman were trying to work this out, but it was difficult.
Yes.
And by August 6th, when you give Mr. Newman Mr. Sneiderman's email address, this is what was going on in your home. This stressful time.
Yes.
Balancing kids and job.
Yes.
In your dinners in Minden, Nevada, Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and Longmont, Colorado with Mr. Newman, did you discuss with him the stresses of working outside in the corporate world and still trying to balance the home?
I did have those discussions with him.
So at the time he met Mr. Sneiderman, he knew that you were doing the best you could to balance corporate America and mom and wife and all the duties that go with that.
You want to repeat the question?
When at the time you introduced Mr. Sneiderman with Mr. Newman, you had already disclosed to Mr. Newman the difficulties in balancing corporate world, working mom, and the duties that every parent has at home.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've been going about an hour at this point in time. I'm gonna give you a quick break in the jury room. It'll be in the neighborhood like it was yesterday, in about 10 minutes, and it'll be a real 10 minutes. Deputy Moore, would you assist me?
All right.
All right, lawyers and parties, you may be seated. All right, we're back on the record. Faye, you may continue, Mr. Rubin.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Mr. Sneiderman, we were talking about the fact that on August 6th, you gave Mr. Newman your husband's email.
That's correct.
Back in August, you understood that they were going to get together to discuss business.
That was my understanding, yes.
And in fact, you were copied on an email in which they did get together.
That's correct. Rusty copied me on almost every thing he did.
And you understood that at one point they met for lunch or coffee or something like that to discuss business, correct?
Correct.
They being Mr. Sneiderman and Mr. Newman.
Correct.
And they met a second time, correct?
I'm not aware, but I'm sure that that's true. That sounds right.
Are you aware that at the second time, Mr. Sneiderman invited Mr. Newman to the house to discuss business?
Rusty worked out of the house, so that sounds right, yes.
To your house?
Yes.
And at the time, you lived on, is it, and I may be pronouncing it wrong, Manjet?
Either of those are good.
What do you call it?
Manjet Court.
Okay, in Dunwoody.
Yes.
And that's where Mr. Newman and Mr. Sneiderman met.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, at that point, by August 12th, 15th, 16th, 17th
Yeah.
of 2010,
Yes.
you had traveled several times with Mr. Newman, correct?
Correct.
He had expressed his romantic interest in you, correct?
Correct.
He had disclosed to you some of the sad events in his childhood, correct?
Correct.
You had discussed with him the problems that you were having balancing the corporate world and your marriage and the kids, correct?
The adjustment period was stressful, yes.
And at that point, Mr. Newman meets Mr. Sneiderman.
That's correct.
You also talked to Mr. Newman about your children, correct?
Correct.
He knew you had 2 children,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And he knew that at times when you would come home, the kids would cling to you because they hadn't seen you all day, correct?
Sounds like my kids.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Newman started to email you about the children, correct?
I'm not clear as to what you're asking.
Okay. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm sorry.
What number is that, Mr. Wood?
Your Honor,
3886.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking me.
Your Honor, this
No, that's
is
Mr. Rubin. But
I thought you, I didn't know who you were asking.
stipulation number 3886.
Thank you. You may proceed.
On August 16th, Mr. Newman sent you an email, correct?
Yes.
And that is your email address.
Yes.
And the subject of the email is balance.
Yes.
And
This is from him to me.
correct? Yes, I
Yes.
understand that.
Okay.
What he says in this is one of the great concepts in the movie, I hope someday we'll get a chance to see it together, is, quote, balance, close quote.
Okay.
He says there's no panacea for balance. You are overwhelmed because you are trying to find answers and trying to get it all together. It will come from the small things you do to try to achieve that balance. So it starts today. You will reach your balance by doing these two things, and you must do them. Number one, leave at 3:30, pick Sophia up, go buy stuff with her, let her settle in at home, and then start working on it with her 5-ish. Mrs. Sneiderman, when he's talking about working on it with her, I assume there's a homework assignment or something. Is that your understanding of this email?
I don't remember the homework assignment, but sounds like it.
Let Rusty pick up Ian around 5:30, it continues, correct? The email continues.
Yes.
During 3:30 to 5:40 and 5:45, think of nothing else but Sophia. Nothing else matters at that time.
Right.
So he is emailing you, giving you advice about your kids.
If that was the question, the answer is yes.
And in fact, he's aware from your discussions with him about some of the things going on with the kids, including homework assignments, correct?
It does seem that way.
And that's based on what you would have told him.
Sure.
Turn to page 3867, if you would, please.
Yep.
That's also an email on August 16th, 2010
Uh-huh.
at 11:42 at night.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I worked late into the night. I'm sorry, what was the question?
I didn't ask one yet.
Oh.
On 3867, in email number 3867, you had emailed him a JPEG, a
Yeah.
picture, attached to an email.
Uh-huh.
He responds to that picture,
Right.
and this is what he says. I just saw your text messages. I am so happy for you and Sophia, you can't imagine.
That's right.
Thank you for sharing with me. I feel like I was there, standing by the doorway, looking adoringly with a huge, proud smile on my face. It made my week. And then there's a little happy face, Hemi.
Uh-huh.
What was the picture?
I'm going to make an assumption that it was the project I did with Sophia,
Okay.
but I don't know.
So you are sharing these moments with your child with Mr. Newman.
Sure, he's a friend. He pretended to be. This was his way of working his masterful manipulation way into my life. And I'm sure there's a lot more of these.
I'm sorry, the email originated from you to him, not him to you, correct?
I'm sorry, no, the email originated from him to me.
Well, on August 16th, you sent him the picture.
Oh, I'm sorry, on August 16th at 8:36 a.m., it originated from him to me.
About balance.
Yes, that's correct.
But
I'm
the
talking
picture-
about that homework project that you pointed out.
But the picture was sent from you to him.
That's correct.
Okay.
These are just duplicates. Did you need these?
May I approach
You
him?
may.
after Mr. Newman and Mr. Sneiderman met twice, you went to Greenville with Mr. Newman.
Correct.
And that's the trip where you requested that the rooms be next to each other.
I made the reservation, and I made the reservation they should be close to each other. And that was directed based on his request.
Did you make the reservation to keep the rooms next to each other?
I don't remember. I don't make hotel reservations all the time. I don't know what I said exactly.
Would a review of the reservation sheets from the hotel refresh your memory?
I'm sure it can, but that's not necessary. Like I said, it's possibly something I would have said. Can't say that I did or didn't. That's what you asked.
But in fact, you told the police when you were interviewed after Mr. Sneiderman's death that you didn't control where the rooms were in the hotel.
I didn't always control where the rooms were in the hotel. What hotel are we speaking of? Just in general, what I told the police was a general question?
Yes, that you did not control where the rooms were.
That I did not always control where the rooms were? Is that what I said?
No, that you did not control where the rooms were. Did
Okay.
you tell the police that?
I don't know. I don't recall, and it's possible.
But in fact, as far as Greenville, you did put in a request,
It
correct?
does seem that way, yes.
Okay. Did you watch The Goodbye Girl with Mr. Newman on that trip?
No.
Okay. Have you ever seen Goodbye Girl?
Nope.
That's the trip where you held hands,
That's correct.
okay, as you testified to yesterday.
That's correct.
And that's the trip where, as we saw yesterday, you sent an email afterwards repenting, angry that whatever had happened on that trip had happened at all.
Correct.
When did you tell Mr. Newman the dates of your children's birthdays?
I don't recall ever saying that. I do know that I held a birthday party for my daughter, in which I shared that weekend. I don't even remember when the party was, but I bake birthday cakes as a hobby, and had shared that information with him and was working on the cake for several days. So I would presume he figured out, or I don't know if, I don't think I ever, her birthday was around that August, her birthday is August 25th, by the way.
Sophia, you're talking about?
Yes.
And do you know that Mr. Newman put both your children's birthdays in his iPad calendar?
I was not aware of that until yesterday.
Mr. Newman was also sending you coupons or special offers for you to take the kids to kid productions like Sesame Street. Do you recall?
No, I don't.
Okay. May I approach the witness, John?
You may.
Mr. Sneiderman, I'm going to hand you what's been marked as Defendant's Exhibit number 8.
Uh-huh.
Do you recognize that as an email from Mr. Newman to you?
Sure.
And in that email, it is sent on what, August 18th,
Yes.
2010.
Yes.
And Mr. Newman is emailing you a special offer for a Sesame Street show, correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And that is for you,
It says, in case you were interested.
presumably for you and your kids. That's how you took it.
I didn't respond, so I can't even say how I took it. There's no response.
It wouldn't be for you and Mr. Sneiderman to go to see Sesame Street.
Why wouldn't my husband, I, and my children go to Sesame Street?
You would, but
Okay.
not for you and your husband without your kids.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
So you understood that to be for the kids.
Sure. Something my kids would enjoy. Is that
Right.
what you're, yeah.
Did you tell him at that point, stop talking about my kids?
No.
Did you tell him in an email, verbally, in a text, anyway, a letter, Do not mention my kids.
Why would I do that? I love talking about my children.
This is the man who's stalking you, according to your testimony.
And now I know that he was stalking me. That's correct.
In fact,
He's a predator.
In fact, he sent you another email with a special offer.
With nothing better to do with his time than to send me offers about what to do with my children.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
There's nothing.
1 second. What number is that, Mr. Brewer?
3755, Your Honor.
Thank you. 3755. Thank you.
Mrs. Sneiderman,
Yes.
did Mr. Newman send you a similar type of offer or announcement of another kid show?
I don't know because it doesn't, all it says in the subject line, there's nothing in the body of the email.
Did he send you an email regarding the Peter Pan show at the Fox Theater?
That's what this says.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it sent to you?
It's sent to my GE account from his Yahoo account.
Do you recall even receiving that?
No, sir, I don't.
And what's the date of that email?
October 20th, when he was already planning to murder my husband.
October 20th. So after he's met with Mr. Sneiderman that
Yes.
you introduced,
Mm-hmm.
and you've gone on several trips with him.
That's correct.
Okay. May I approach John?
You may.
Mrs. Sneiderman, I've handed you a document that's stipulation number 4347 and 3810, 3811, and 3812. Do you recognize that as an email sent by Mr. Newman to you?
Yes.
Okay. Go below that top email to your email to him.
Uh-huh.
On September 7th
Yes.
at 6:12, let me finish my question.
Yes.
6:12 a.m.,
Yes.
you sent to Mr. Sneiderman sent to you
Yes.
photographs,
That's right. We upload our photos to Costco.
100 photos,
From her birthday, yes.
her being Sophia.
Yes.
Okay. So Mr. Sneiderman sent the photographs to you, and then at 9:26 a.m., you forwarded those to Mr. Newman.
9:26 a.m. Yes, that's what it says.
So again, it's you sending those photographs, 100 photographs to Mr. Newman,
100
correct?
photographs of Sophia's birthday party, including the cake that I was referencing in our verbal conversation. Yeah.
And on September 8th at 11:37 a.m., Mr. Newman responded.
Yeah.
He said,
did.
"You and the kids are amazing.
Yep.
Thanks for sharing that with me.
Yeah.
Didn't realize Sophia helped with the cake.
Right. There were pictures of Sophia helping with the cake.
Looks like you had fun, though a twinge of stress there for a minute."
Yeah, the cake was about 4 feet tall.
Is it true that you sent these photographs to Mr. Newman after you had emailed him about being angry and repenting?
This is on September 8th, so technically, according to a calendar, that would be true.
According to a calendar,
Yes.
that would be true. According to any measure, that's true.
That's correct.
Okay. If you would look at 3811.
Okay.
Did you send to Mr. Newman an additional 98 photographs
Right,
of that
all from
birthday?
Sophia's
Hold
birthday
on.
party.
Let the lawyer finish.
No,
Let him finish the
I thought he
question.
was finished.
Of that birthday party?
Yes.
And again, Mr. Newman received those photographs and responded, "Thank you."
That's it. Correct.
3812. If you look at 3812.
Mm-hmm.
You're sending these 98 photographs to Mr. Newman with the line, "in case you are interested." Correct?
Right, and the cake. Right.
It doesn't say, does it?
I'm sorry?
It doesn't say.
No, it doesn't say in the cake. We had about 5,000 conversations that didn't go on through email.
You had expressed concern to your friends about this upcoming trip to Europe, to England, correct?
Correct.
You had been approached in Minden, Nevada, back in mid-July, and your boss had read you this poem, correct?
Correct.
And you had to travel with him. You didn't feel like you had a choice.
Correct, I did not.
And you, after Minden, Nevada, you had been to Longmont and spent time with him there, correct?
Correct.
And after expressing his romantic interest in you, you had then gone to Greenville, South Carolina for the first time with Mr. Newman.
Correct.
And that resulted in you being upset and angry, correct?
Correct.
And even after that, you're sending him pictures of your kids
Yeah.
and their birthday parties and their homework, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
After every time we spoke to each other, it was as if he was my best friend. Anytime I spoke to him and said to him, you know, this is inappropriate, or had a verbal conversation, oh, I understand, I respect your marriage, yet jab at my marriage, jab at my marriage, jab at my marriage. That's what he liked to do. Oh, but yet I respect you, you're a good mother. That was his mode of operation.
The trip to England, you plan with Mr. Newman, as you discussed yesterday, correct?
That's correct.
After being angry about what happened in Greenville and telling him it cannot happen again,
Correct.
you plan this trip where you are discussing going to clubs and castles and shows, correct?
That was in the spreadsheet, yes.
That's what you're discussing with Mr. Newman.
Yep, that's correct.
May I approach you on it?
You may.
Where? I'm sorry.
I haven't asked a question. yet.
Okay.
Hold on. Mrs. Sneiderman, you left for England around September 18th. Is that accurate?
Was that a Saturday?
Yes.
Then yes.
Okay. If you look at page 5634 in the stipulated evidence, the first page of that
I'm
is
sorry, I don't see any fives, so.
5634. I'm sorry. May I approach you?
You
on it?
may.
See if I may not have found it.
Nope. Those are only fours.
Let's try this.
Yeah.
5634. Yes, Your Honor. That's the itinerary, not the itinerary, the booking information, the flight information.
Yeah, Rusty and I worked on this together. What are we talking about? What part of this email are we speaking of?
I'm saying that's the flight information, correct?
Yeah, we had to stop at a lot of places, so it took me a while to figure out how to get from point A to point B.
So you're leaving September 18th.
Yes.
Okay. You discuss,
But this is in August, this email. Are we talking about the same?
I'm asking you when you flew to England.
Yes, September 18th.
Okay, thank you. On September 12th, on page, I'm sorry, let me direct you to page 4479.
Yes.
After introducing Mr. Newman and Mr. Sneiderman,
Yes.
you emailed Mr. Newman on September 12th, 2010, What a fantastic idea. Yes, we can figure it out. I've always wanted to go to a club in London,
Right.
although I am sure I am nowhere near cool enough.
Right.
My clothes are certainly not trendy enough. Wink, little emoticon there, right? Friday, would love that, capital letters, LOVE. But I have a million other things to do, so that would not be the wise decision. That's your email to Mr. Newman.
Right.
Now, the
Yes.
million other things to do, that would not be a wise decision, references going to a movie with him.
I don't know. Well, the email before, if this is in order, I presume, so the email before talks about,
Talks about the club,
right,
and then talks about...
Leicester Square. I don't know what we're talking about here.
Okay.
I mean, I'm lost. I don't know
Okay,
what
let me
you're
go
speaking
back and I'll...
I don't find in the email what you're talking about.
Okay. The email before that, from Mr. Newman to you,
Over here on
page
second-
4479.
479. Yes.
He says, at LaFont in Sandy Springs, and if you'd like, we could go Friday. There's a showing at 2 o'clock, which would get us home for the holiday by
Right.
4:15.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Yes. So, what's the question? What's our question?
Not yet.
Okay.
You testified yesterday that despite the planning of the club or the theater,
Yes.
you didn't go to either one of those,
That's correct. We did not.
but you went to the castle
Yes.
in Scotland
Yes.
with Mr. Newman.
Yes.
At that point, is he still expressing his interest in you? In that point being mid-September 2010.
There were no overt romantic gestures made, no.
Okay. So despite your concern that you expressed to your friends about the upcoming trip to Europe,
Yes.
you did plan with Mr. Newman to go to various places outside of the work agenda.
Yes. Like I said, when I travel for business, I try to, outside the country, certainly I try to take advantage of those locations.
Take advantage of those locations, even with the man you know loves you and is romantically interested in you.
Yeah, well, he told me he was fine with it, so what was I supposed to do?
What were you supposed to do? Well, you said yesterday you shied away from him.
Sure.
Planning to go to a club, planning to go to the theater, going to a castle, is that your definition of shying away from him?
Well, we all have different definitions. Like I said, going to London without seeing a show seems like a shame to me.
Is
So,
that your definition of shying away from him?
it is.
May I approach him?
You may.
Mrs. Sneiderman, I'm showing you what's stipulated page number 5170.
Right.
The desire versus reality email.
I'm sorry, what?
Look at the top. Did you email Mr. Newman on September 14th at 4:27 p.m.?
That says
you-
that there's an email from me to him on
Yes.
September 14th, yeah.
Regarding Lori.
Oh, yes,
That's the subject line, correct?
The subject line is Lori, yes.
And in that body of the email, you say to Mr. Newman,
Yep.
honest is good, and maybe I'm not being honest enough. Not sure. But I do not want it to ruin the trip overall, and you know that. Desire versus reality, as you know, is a world I'm trying to ignore because I have to. So sorry, not fair to you. I know. I have other thoughts, but not the time right now.
Yep. Was the question?
Is that accurate? Did I read that accurately?
You read it accurately, yes.
Now, when you expressed your anger after the Greenville trip,
Yes.
that it could not happen again, that you had to repent for whatever you did in Greenville, Mr. Newman emailed you saying, I don't even have to go to England if that's what you want. Do you recall that?
I don't recall. 5,000 emails.
I apologize, Your Honor. I thought I had that handy.
That's fine. Take time. No problem. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stand and stretch in the jury box. If you're in the jury box, you must participate in the stand and stretch. You take your jackets off, make yourself comfortable. Ladies and gentlemen, it's always important to be alert and attentive. I must always be able to see your pupils at all times. All right? I must see your pupils at all times. Everyone stands in the jury box. It's not voluntary, it's mandatory. Everybody participates in the jury box. All right? You may move, you may stretch, you may be seated. Which means I must see both pupils. All right. We're back on the record. You may proceed.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may approach.
Mrs. Sneiderman, let's start with stipulated page number 4949.
Yeah. Yes, yes.
This is where Mr. Newman emails you on August 27th after you've expressed your need to repent.
Right. Are we talking?
I'm looking at the bottom, the first email, which would be the one on the bottom of 4949. He says, I caused you so much pain
Right.
when all I wanted was to give you so much.
Right.
I know it doesn't help, but I am so sorry. I shouldn't have come over. You are so beautiful, such a great person, and in the conversation about Addie, I discovered the mature, responsible Mama Andrea. Don't respond, not that I think you would. I'm sorry, Hemi. That's what he wrote you.
Yep.
And you responded, I really do not know what to say at this point. I am angry. Your apology is heartfelt, but does not make the ongoing pain go away that I now have to repent and live with for the rest of my life. That's the hand-holding episode. Is that what your testimony is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Not sure what I was thinking. I am also feeling that we may have ruined it. Not sure. I'm not trying to be hurtful. I'm just being honest. I'm not sure how to live with this.
Yes, sir.
Go to page 4951 if you would, please.
Yes.
On August 27th at 11:38 in the evening, 23:38, Mr. Newman emails you, I fully understand and I know nothing I say now will help. I will continue to be the best boss you have or will ever have.
You bet.
Today's one-on-one and plant tour were an indication that we can keep it pleasantly professional. I don't have to go to England. But if you think that is good that I go for work reasons, then I will. Is that what it says, Mrs. Sneiderman?
That's what it says. Yeah, sounds good.
You had the option at that point of telling Hemi Newman not to go to England.
Oh, but he needs to go for work reasons.
If you think I need to go for work reasons.
And I did.
And I will.
And I did.
At that point, you had the option of telling him not to go to England, correct?
Not if I thought he needed to be there for work reasons.
The man, well,
Okay?
if you'll go to page 3841, please. on August 29th, after Greenville, but before England,
Yep.
Mr.
Yes.
Newman writes, "Marry me. You're thinking I'm crazy and you've made your intentions clear, but before you respond, just..."
Spend the night thinking about it.
All right, I lost that page.
This is 3841.
3841, Your Honor.
And 3842.
He writes you again on August 29th. "I know you will shut me out if I try to talk to you, but it is so important that you hear this. Maybe inappropriate for email, but that is what we have. The betrayal and anger is not about what you, we did, close friends. That's a cop-out. It's about how you felt, what you wanted, how you felt when we looked at the stars in Tahoe, when we woke up Friday morning in Denver, when we walked out of the restaurant on Thursday, when you took my hand and nestled your head on my shoulder. Blaming it all on Friday morning doesn't cut it. You keep trying to suppress thinking what it would be like to make Friday dinner together, to share a mahjong night with friends, or watch a movie in bed. That I know how to make you and Sophia happy, even though I have never met her. You can't stop thinking about it, but you're so locked in that it will not fail, in quotes, that it tears you apart. It's a betrayal not to those that love you, as you stated, but to yourself, and it happened way before Friday morning."
Or do you want me to read the rest? Or I'm sorry.
I'm through reading that email, Mrs. Sneiderman.
Okay, I forget if there was a question in the beginning by the time we got through the email. Is there a question?
The question is, you had the option of stopping this man who's expressing his love for you, his desire to marry you, from going to England, correct?
Correct. If I felt he didn't need to be there for work reasons, that's correct.
On October 21st, after England,
Yes.
you went on another trip with Mr. Newman.
That's correct.
This time you went to Greenville again.
That's correct.
This is the trip where you danced at a place called The Pulse, is that right?
I don't know the name.
Well, we talked about it yesterday.
I was told the name yesterday.
Okay. Was it a dance club or a restaurant? How would you describe it?
Maybe both.
It was a restaurant with a dance floor.
Correct.
Okay. Do you recall that at that restaurant, it was basically empty except for you and Mr. Newman?
Yes.
Do you know why Mr. Newman would have emailed a friend named Melanie White that you finally gave in?
No, I don't. We're talking about a self-proclaimed delusional individual who killed my husband. No, I don't question anything that he sent to anyone.
Whatever it was that happened in Greenville, afterwards you were upset again, correct?
That's correct.
Tell us what you did in Greenville that upset you.
Partner dancing, I realized that next morning was not a good idea, that he did not know boundaries, that he was never going to really let this go, and that we really couldn't, he wasn't listening to what I was saying, evidently.
Is that when you told Mr. Sneiderman about your boss's interest?
No, but that morning on the way home, I spoke to Newman, and on the whole drive back, and I basically cut off any friendship that we had at all.
Okay. So instead of telling your husband, instead of telling HR, Human Resources,
Correct.
and GE, you told Mr. Newman, that's it.
I said, you're draining me and I have responsibilities at home. You obviously don't know your boundaries. We can't continue to be, we tried to be friends in addition to co-workers, and that obviously wasn't working out, so that was it. In fact, I was even thinking about quitting my job.
Okay.
And once again, he sat there patting me on the head like he always did, saying, I get it. I get it. You're a good person. I get it. Placating me.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Mrs. Sneiderman, if you look at stipulated page number 4239. On November 2nd, after Greenville, which is October 21st,
Is that yes?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
actually, let me back up so we start together with the first email. So at the bottom of 4239, there's an email from Mr. Newman to you. It goes on to page 4240. Okay?
Yes.
And Mr. Newman says to you, and the subject is Gemini horoscope for November 1st.
Right.
Interesting. This was your horoscope for yesterday. Scatterbrained in quotes. You did good work, but yes, you were a bit all over the place. And I hope I was that, quote, grounded friend. Now, this is after you had told him, according to your testimony,
That's right.
that you couldn't be friends anymore.
Correct.
Okay. You may not
I
want...
can't stop him from sending emails.
Okay, well then you respond to him. You don't respond, stop talking to me. You don't respond, if you email me again, I will go to HR. What you respond is, not sure what to say to this. Would you be surprised if I told you, ... I told you so, ... This is what is happening to me regularly now. You're the cause of this, so you may temporarily be the grounded friend, but the situation is what is causing that for me.
You bet.
Mrs. Sneiderman,
Yes.
this man that you have now cut off from being your friend,
Yes.
that you realize you can't be friends with, you called him at 7:25 on November 10th, the day of the gas leak.
You mean the day he tried to kill Rusty?
The day of the gas leak, ma'am. Is that correct?
The day he tried to kill Rusty, that's correct.
Okay. You called him again at noon on that day, correct?
Yeah, we talked a lot about work stuff all the time.
And he called you back at 9:11 in the morning and then again right before noon, correct?
Okay. Sure.
Let me ask you a question, and Mr. Geary asked this yesterday. Was your cell phone number 404-374-1931?
Yes.
And was Mr. Newman's
I have
cell
no
phone
idea
number-
what his cell phone number is.
Was he was on speed dial?
Correct, as were every GE person's in a GE directory on my phone. It's hooked up with the GE directory.
Mrs. Sneiderman,
Yes.
the chart that's in front of you is from stipulated page numbers 801 to 802.
I'm sorry, do I have
It's in front of you on the
this?
screen.
Right, okay.
Do you see your calls, your two calls
Yes.
to Mr. Newman,
It looks like
7:25 in the morning.
they were at the same time, same phone call, I guess, for 4 seconds.
Before the 911 call from Mr. Snyder.
That was hours before, an hour before, yeah. That was on my way to work. I often called him on my way to work.
And then a number of calls between you and Mr. Newman after
Sure.
the 911 call.
Through the day, yep.
And then if you'll look
Seems
down on stipulated page numbers 1430 and 1431,
Yes,
a number of text messages between the two of you.
yep. We texted about work all the time.
May I approach the easel, Your Honor?
You may. Ladies and gentlemen, can you see that? If not, he can move it in a position if you can see it. You can't see it. All right. You may continue, sir.
Mrs. Sneiderman,
This is,
I'm going to use a
You need a
little
point?
laser
You
point.
have-
I have a point.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. On stipulated page number 805, it lists the phone calls between you and Mr. Newman
yep,
on November 17th and November 18th.
okay.
You
Yes.
called, that's your phone number, 404-374-1931.
Yes,
You called Mr. Newman at 7:38 p.m.
sure.
and spoke for almost 18 minutes on the 17th, correct?
Yes,
According to these records.
yes,
On the morning of the 18th,
yes,
you called Mr. Newman 1, 2, 3, 4,
never spoke to him and.
5 times, 6 times,
Yep,
correct?
that's.
First time you actually spoke to him,
I didn't speak to him, I didn't speak to him at all.
Okay.
during the day.
someone else may have.
Or my voicemail, left a voicemail or
On
got
the
his voicemail.
17th of November, you texted him
Yep,
at 6:59 p.m.
around the same time as the other phone calls,
and then he texted you back at 7:32
right?
p.m.
Yep.
May I approach the
You
easel?
may. Bless you.
Mrs. Sneiderman, this man you've cut off as a friend
Yeah,
as of the Greenville trip.
yep,
On November 19th,
yep,
the day after
Yeah.
Mr. Sneiderman is killed,
yes,
at 11:19 at night,
yes.
11:48 I'm sorry, on 11:19.
Yes.
At 11:48 p.m.,
Yes,
you call Mr. Newman.
yes, as I did when the police came to the house on November 19th and I gave them a slew of names. I basically called all of those people or tried to see them in person, all the people that I could get a hold of whose names I gave to the police on the 19th. I felt, since the whole thing made no sense to me anyway, that it would be my responsibility to tell him that I told the police that I brought his name up and that he had feelings for me. That's
Did-
exactly what I told him in that time.
And you told him that you told the police that nothing happened, correct?
I don't remember anything but to tell him that I gave the police his name. Oh, and he said, "Oh shit, what about my job?" He was worried about his job.
Did you tell the police at any time in 4 interviews, 5 interviews with the police, that Mr. Newman said, "Oh shit, what about my job"?
Yes, actually, I have.
And which police officer did you tell?
I've told Mr. Geary.
Did you ever tell the Dunwoody Police on 11/19, 11/24, January 4th, or January 5th?
I don't think so. I don't
You don't
the phone
think so?
call was relevant. I don't know if that's what I said. I don't recall, but I told them a lot of other things.
You called Mr. Newman back
Looks like they were just right in
4 minutes
succession.
later and spoke to him for another 3 minutes and 49
It
seconds.
looks like they were right after another. Maybe I got cut off. I'm not so sure.
Let me ask the question. You spoke to him first for 3 minutes,
Uh-huh.
and then for 3 minutes and 49 seconds. The night after you spoke to the police,
That's correct.
and you told Mr. Newman
That's correct.
that you had mentioned his name,
That's correct.
that you had told the police that he expressed an interest in
That's
you,
correct.
and that you told the police that nothing happened.
I don't know what I told him past the, I think you should know I told the police I gave them your name. As I did again with many other people on that day. And the time of day is irrelevant. I wasn't sleeping at that point.
After that phone call,
Yes,
Mr. Newman sent you some more emails, correct?
I am sure he was sending work emails or concern, emails out of concern. Yes, I'm sure.
He sent you an email on November 24th about how sad and anguished he felt.
Yeah, I bet he did.
Do you want to see it? Would it refresh your memory?
I would prefer not to see it.
Would it refresh your memory?
Sure.
You may approach.
Mrs. Sneiderman, please look at page 3801.
This is the night after he came to my home.
November 24th, you'd already spoken to the police now twice.
That's correct.
And he emails you essentially
Yes.
how sad it all was about
Yes.
Mr.
Must be
Sneiderman.
so sad.
At that point,
Yes.
did you call the police and say, look, this guy, he's obsessed with me, he's not taking no for an
No.
answer?
Would you like me to read the email? Because this email doesn't indicate a murder.
No, we're not.
Okay.
I'm not asking you to read the email.
All right, well, the answer is no.
Okay. On December 28th,
Yes,
he emails you an iTunes song.
that's correct.
It is the song by Bruno Mars, Just the Way You Are.
I never opened the iTunes. I don't listen to the song. I have no idea what the song is about.
And is it that email that prompted you to talk to your friends, one of your friends, Tammy Parker or Andrea Littman, and say, I think it's Mr. Newman?
It was Tammy Parker, and she called me on my anniversary. So I wasn't speaking with anyone at the time, really about anything, because I was pretty much catatonic. And she got me to call her because we were talking about another friend and something she was going through, which seemed shocking. And so she called me, or I called her back, and that's when I expressed to her this gut feeling that I had, yeah.
Between the email, the Bruno Mars email,
That's it.
and what the sketch finally registered, you thought at that point you had a gut feeling it was Mr. Newman?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, prior to that, Mr. Newman had retrieved your laptop, as you discussed with Mr. Geary yesterday, correct?
That's correct.
And I think your testimony was yesterday that the only way he could access that was he must have been looking over my shoulder, capturing my password.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you said?
That's what I said.
In fact, you told your cousin Josh Tackle
Yes.
to give the password to Mr. Newman, correct?
I told my cousin to have him get my laptop. That's right.
All right, so you told your cousin, Mr. Tackle,
Mm-hmm.
Tackel,
Yes, sir.
to call Mr. Newman and tell him to retrieve your laptop.
That's what I remember saying. Yes, sir.
And at some point, Mr. Tackle was staying with you for a couple days to help you.
Correct.
And Mr. Tackle was...
It's Tackell.
Tackell, I'm sorry. Mr. Tackell was communicating with Mr. Newman.
Yes, on my behalf.
Mr. Newman wanted to bring the laptop over to you.
Yes.
And Mr. Tackell said, don't bring it over now, just bring it when you come to show.
I'm unaware of what their communications are, but that sounds right.
At some point, you told Mr. Tackell your password so he could pass it on to Mr. Newman.
It's a possibility.
Well, how else would Mr. Tackell know your password?
I have no idea.
It would have to come from you.
Sounds
correct?
good.
So when you say that Mr. Newman must have gotten your password by looking over your shoulder, that's not correct.
Yeah, well, he tried to enter my garage about a month earlier, I bet, so, which is the same as my
That's
other
not
password.
correct.
I suppose not.
Despite knowing in your gut that Mr. Newman killed your husband, you emailed him on January 3rd.
Yes, sir.
Now, this is the man that on December 30th, you were so afraid of
Yep,
that you couldn't email or call or text the police.
that's correct.
That you were so afraid of that you couldn't have your parents email, call, or text the police.
Correct.
But on January 3rd, you went out of your way
Yes,
to
sir.
reschedule a meeting, a face-to-face with Mr.
Wasn't a
Newman.
reschedule.
Correct?
I emailed him about having a meeting with him and other people, yes.
And when he couldn't do it on the 3rd, you wanted to reschedule, correct?
That seems to be the interpretation of the email, yes. Meanwhile, I already had an appointment to see Chief Brogan. At that point, my husband's murder has gone unsolved for over almost 2 months. I felt pretty empowered when I got home to Atlanta.
Mrs. Sneiderman, in December of 2010,
Yes.
you received the proceeds from an insurance policy
Yes, sir, I did.
for approximately $2 million.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
That's all I had, ma'am.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me give you a brief stretch break in the jury room. You've been going about an hour now before redirect commences. This will be your last break before we take you to the lunch hour. So it'll be in the neighborhood of 10 minutes. 10 minutes, Deputy Warden.
Ma'am, to the best of your knowledge and memory, was there ever an email, a text, a verbal communication, or any communication in any form whatsoever that you ever received from the defendant where he indicated or said he believed Sophia and Ian were his children?
No, sir.
Anything that even remotely would have made you thought that in any communication whatsoever?
No, sir.
In any communication form whatsoever, did the defendant ever tell you anything about a demon at his boarding school or that his boarding school was a traumatic experience?
No, sir.
You indicated that your house in Dunwoody was half paid off.
Yes, sir.
What's the value of that house, roughly?
The current value or what I paid?
Well, what did you pay for it?
I paid $920,000 for the house.
Okay.
Sadly, not worth that anymore.
I understand that. You indicated that when you were in Florida and you talked to Tammy Parker,
Yes.
and that you indicated to Tammy Parker that you knew who killed Rusty, that out of fear of the defendant, you did not call the police because he was in Florida.
That was my understanding. Yes, that's correct.
Were you communicating with the defendant?
No, sir, I was not. Not until January 3rd or whenever I got back.
How did you know he was in Florida?
He sent emails before that. He was supposedly having some sort of stomach surgery. I heard this through my friends. And then after that, someone died in his family. He was going to Florida for that purpose. That's how I knew.
So you heard this through third parties?
Through work emails on my phone that he was sending to a larger group. Sorry, I can't come into work this week. I'm having surgery. Sorry, I don't feel well. Sorry, my so-and-so died. somehow the whole month of December he was missing.
Okay. Now, you indicate again that you were fearful of him, you thought he might kill you, and you were worried that he was stalking you.
That's correct.
But still, on January 3rd,
That's right.
you set up a meeting with him to see him at GE.
Yep, I needed to see it for my own eyes.
So you weren't that afraid of him, were you?
Not anymore.
Do you remember telling police when they asked you if anybody was trying to break up your marriage? No.
On November 19th, is that what we're talking about?
Yes, they asked you, is anybody trying to break up your marriage? And you said no.
Yes, that's what I said.
Okay. We went through the emails
Yes.
that indicate he said, I love you.
Yes.
That indicate, marry me.
Okay.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Did that not cross your mind that someone was trying to break up your marriage?
No, I'm a pretty, when it comes to relationships, Rusty's the only person I've ever been with, only person that I met him when I was 18. Not really savvy in relationship know-how. And was I naive in this situation? It's possible. But that's not break up your marriage. Break up your marriage is, bust down into your house, I don't know, something like that.
If he asks you to marry him, if you were to marry him, you couldn't be married to Rusty.
Yeah, well, did I respond in any way?
I didn't ask if you were.
Okay.
The question from the police was someone trying to break up your marriage, and you said no.
That's correct. I did.
Why?
Because that doesn't seem like breaking up my marriage. It's not like he was doing something physical to break up my marriage. Anyway.
Okay, you admitted that when you went to the police on January 4th, you wanted to discuss the investigation and what was going on and what the answers were, right?
Yes, sir.
And you wanted to know what they were doing on this area or this person or that person, right?
Yes.
And you admitted, even though in late December you told Tammy Parker you knew who it was, you never told them on January 4th, I know who it is, it's Hemi Newman, did you?
That's correct.
You took them down a rabbit hole and tried to get them to look at all these other people, didn't you?
No, sir, I did not.
Why were you protecting the defendant?
I was not.
Why didn't you mention his name?
Have you seen what's happened to my life?
Have you seen what's happened to Rusty?
Have you noticed what's happened to my life since
I'm done,
Hemi was
Judge.
murdered? Since Hemi murdered my husband?
Any recalls?
No, Your Honor.
Lawyers, may this witness be released and excused from her subpoena, or do you want her to remain under subpoena?
I need her to remain, Judge, but she's authorized to stay in the court.
I would ask that she remain under subpoena.
All right.
And can I have 1 second?
Do you
Judge?
have any, well, do you want to talk before?
Just 1 second.
You may.
Judge.
All right, we're back on the record. Yes, Mr. Rubin?
Your Honor, we would ask that she be sequestered like every other witness and remain outside the court.
All right. I will grant that request at this time.
I'm
Ma'am,
sorry,
one
I have to
second.
stay outside the courtroom?
Mrs. Sneiderman, 1 second. Mrs. Sneiderman, yes, at this point in time, you're going to remain under subpoena, and yes, ma'am, you're going to remain outside of the courtroom. You may come down.
I have to leave the
Mrs.
courtroom for the
Sneiderman.
rest of the trial?
Mrs. Sneiderman, I'm going to say it as clear as I can. You're going to come off that witness stand, and you're going to remain outside. Call your next witness.
State calls Rainier Van Eden.